Hi, I'm Nicole, and this is Paige. Today, we are going to do virtual workplace communication. We would like to take comments, questions, hopes, dreams at the end of the presentation. So please save your questions and comments, and we'll address them at the end. Otherwise, we would get derailed and go down rabbit holes. So yes, that's what we're talking about today. And I actually was on the board of NCET for 4 years. So if you recognize me from that, that's me.
So I'm Paige Galeoto. I am the Vice President of Creative at Estipona Group. And for those who don't know, we are a full service marketing and communications firm. And I have been with the company for 16 years. In my role, I oversee the creative department, but I also have a background in writing. So I do a lot of content creation for our clients, from writing websites and blogs to creating branding campaigns.
And as I said, I'm Nicole Rose Dion. I work with Paige all the time. I'm the account director. That basically means I'm the go-between between the clients and the internal team. I make things happen. It's a lot of client relations, customer service, and project management. I boil it all down to I am the keeper of all of the details.
So when I was hired by Estipona Group, so many years ago, we were a bricks and mortar company. We had an office on Sinclair Street in the building that is now the Children's Cabinet offices. And honestly, there was really nothing special about those offices. Stained carpet, bad air conditioning. We had an absentee landlord who really had no interest in keeping the space up to date. And as the rent in that office continued to strain our company finances during the recession of 2009, my boss, Edward Estipona, had a realization. And that was that the building itself wasn't doing anything to make us better. It was expendable. It wasn't managing our client relationships. It wasn't doing the creative work. It wasn't getting us new business. So it was expendable, and the employees were not expendable. And yet he was faced with potentially having to lay off people during this trying recession. So he made the choice. He was going to choose his people over that space. And we went virtual back then. It was a big experiment. There were not a lot of companies doing that, certainly not in advertising. We didn't really have a role model to consult about it or talk about it, but we had things in our favor. The technology had advanced for workplace that allowed us to do it. There was voice over IP, there was remote servers, there were online tools that made that kind of remote work possible. And there were some benefits for sure. Many of us had young families, kids that have these irregular schedules and get sick when it's inconvenient. So it kind of worked out well for us. And as it turned out, it worked out sort of seamlessly for our clients. So we made this leap to virtual 11 years ago. And that's kind of why Nicole and I are here. We kind of feel that we're suited to at least offer some advice about communicating virtually, just based on our own experience. We certainly did not envision that in 2020, all of you and all of the world would be joining us in virtual work land, but here we are. This picture is of me working probably in about 2016, back at the old Rounds Bakery on Moana. Rest in peace, Rounds. They no longer have that retail store.
Okay, fast forward to 2015. Nicole and Edward meet for the first time, and he tells me, come work at Estipona Group. It'll be great. You'll work from your house. And I was like, I don't know about that, Ed. I don't know that I want to work from my house. I had tried it a few times at previous jobs, and I always found it so distracting. Like, no. I want to go into an office. I want to see people. I want to be able to just go into somebody's cubicle or whatever and ask them a question. But he really sold me on it. He explained how they have a special methodology. They really set people up in their homes to have an office space. They give you equipment. It works, and people really like it. They like the flexibility. So the more he told me about it, the more I thought, okay, I can see myself doing this. I could get behind this, So I jumped in. I joined the team. I started working from home, and it was pure bliss. Just kidding. There were a few bumps in the road.
Related.
Yeah, there was a little bit of this whole what day is it thing. I'm working from my house. When do I stop working? What is life? What is the day? There was a little bit of that. I got adjusted, of course. But the biggest bump in the road for me was actually the way that the team was communicating. They were using email for everything. I'm talking chatting, in any internal communication, any external communication. There was email chain on top of email chain on top of email chain. It was wild. For someone like me who uses email basically as a to-do list, it was really overwhelming and quite disorganized. You can imagine accidentally leaving someone off an email chain, or maybe worse, accidentally adding someone onto an email chain that shouldn't be. So definitely don't recommend using email for your primary communications internally. So first thing I did when I got in is I said, this needs to stop. You need to stop Facebook messaging each other, and you need to stop emailing each other when you need to talk about work-related things.
Yeah, we did do the Facebook message thing a bit too, didn't we?
Yes, that's terrible. Don't do that to your people. So we instituted a chat platform, which is essentially like Slack. We use Ring Central's version because we use them for everything. So we have this platform for free called Glip. And Glip saved us a ton of time. It cleaned up all of our internal communications, and we were golden after that. So we were like, we're perfect, we're virtual, like we know exactly how to do this. Look at us, oh my gosh. And then COVID hit. And we were like, oh, this changes everything. Because although we had this great internal chat platform, we were still meeting in person once a week, sometimes twice or 3 times a week to get things done, to just touch base, to just work problems out with each other or meet with clients. We were relying so heavily on those in-person meetings we did not realize. I even remember years ago, if we had a really bad snow day, we of course had video meeting capabilities, but the team was like, nah, let's just not meet. So even back then we didn't like video meetings, and we only did them if we had to. So COVID hits and we're like, oh, I guess we're not as virtual as we thought we were. And then the other thing is, once our in-person meetings were taken away, our communication started to break down. And that kind of took us by surprise because we thought we were so good at virtual communication. But ever since COVID, we saw that people started to work in silos a lot more than they ever did. We were all feeling really disconnected from each other, and it started to really hurt our productivity. So since then, we've tried a few things. We looked at what some other people were doing, and some of them worked, some of them did not. But we tried to alleviate the issues of not feeling as connected and not being able to meet in person.
So what we want to touch on today are, the good things that we've gained from working virtually and using remote communication, the things that, kind of were big fails for us, and then kind of how we see the future of virtual work and virtual communication. Every one of us, each company, each person who's working in a virtual space really needs to assess how well their communication infrastructure is working. Estipona Group, we've been doing it 11 years. And as Nicole has already pointed out, we're still honing this in.
Very much.
We do not have all the answers, but we have learned some things. And certainly for people in marketing and for people obviously in many businesses, collaboration is a key part of what you need to do your job well. And virtual collaboration is not perfect. A lot of times it's not ideal, but it's what we're stuck with for now. And it's likely not going to be going away anytime soon. So we may as well optimize how we achieve it. We're pretty sure that the workplace of the post-pandemic future, assuming we get a vaccine and it works and, we get these numbers under control, virtual work is going to become more standard. I think we all know that. We're all seeing that because people are seeing the benefits, the conveniences, the cost savings. And so we may as well all get a handle on how we can do it well, because even if it becomes less a major mainstay of our work, it's going to maintain being a part of our work for the foreseeable future.
Definitely.
So the upsides of virtual communication. Some of the tools that have been developed in the past few years for working virtually are pretty awesome. They are super useful, super efficient. As Nicole mentioned, Glip, it keeps us organized in a super efficient way that doesn't require a lot of labor on the user's part. For someone like me who doesn't have the most great memory.
Oh my God, her memory is terrible.
It is. I like to think I'm living in the moment, and that's why I can remember things that happened before. But I really appreciate that in Glip, our communication platform, everything is organized by client. I can check back on conversations and issues that we talked about. I can review proofs. I can look for files. I can remind myself about things we've already talked about. It's all organized by client, super easy to search. And it keeps all that back and forth chit chat in one place where you can find it easily. Another upside of these virtual platforms is it offers a great way to acknowledge your coworkers in a positive way. We have set up a platform or a channel in our Glip for acknowledgments, for sharing, good news, basically. And, not even though we're a small company, we don't always know exactly what everyone else is doing. And this channel allows us to say, call out a team member and acknowledge something great they did so that the rest of the team can know what they did and appreciate it and, acknowledge it. So it's a great way to do that, which, if we were all meeting in person, and the whole group was there, you might have that opportunity. But even in a non-pandemic world, the whole team is not always going to be together at the same time. So this is a great way to share that kind of information.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if you are sharing kudos publicly, the more details, the better. Really explain why it was good, what happened, and how they did it. That really adds flavor and depth to your congratulations, makes them feel good.
Another aspect of virtual communication that we really appreciate is it kind of can act as a water cooler. So the stuff you might say at the beginning of a meeting or literally in the break room at your company, that chit chat, we set up a channel for that. It's called Water Cooler. So Nick Lee shared this joke that still cracks me up.
Me too.
That, it's not like something you would email the whole team, but it's a way to kind of share that, just where to share fun and interesting and socialize with your coworkers in a way that's not intrusive, but also is inclusive. And another thing that we've discovered about virtual communication is it really provides a platform for being a little silly and lighthearted and engaging. Our platform comes with emojis and GIFs, and you can embed links and photos. And I've discovered that when a coworker is communicating with me and I just want to acknowledge that I've seen their message, even though it doesn't necessarily require a response or require additional information, I acknowledge it by just using what I consider an underused emoji. So I just scroll down the list until I find something that I feel is kind of cute and maybe isn't getting enough play, and click that on just to let my coworker know I see you, I hear you, and here's a little giggle.
Oh, why do you have a pig next to your name, Paige?
Well, as it turns out, growing up, my nickname was Piglet. So I have this little affinity for pigs that kind of harkens back to my childhood. So
I didn't know that. That's so cute.
Yeah, so it makes me smile when I see the pig.
Well, it's nice. And Chelsea has an octopus for whatever reason. I'll have to ask her about that.
It's probably random.
So there are a lot of upsides to virtual communication, but of course there are also some downsides. Number one being Zoom sucks. I realize I'm saying this on a Zoom call. I have nothing against the company Zoom. I just think that video chat platforms can be awful. I'm just gonna say it. So even the CEO of Microsoft has been quoted saying that they're draining. Because they are draining. People are often distracted or eating or not paying attention or multitasking or whatever it is. It's just not the best way to collaborate, to connect socially, anything. It's not great. We're stuck with it though. So, I mean, it is what it is. But you do have to acknowledge that this platform, it just takes so much more energy to get noticed, to get your point across, to listen to what's going on, and to work with each other. Typically, it's a person monologuing one after another, monologue after monologue, because you literally cannot talk at the same time. You won't be able to hear anything. That's just not how real life is. Real life is you say something and then you maybe step on what they said, but you add something to it. And then I can see your body language. I can hear the tone. I can hear the volume. I can see your movements. It's a flat 2D experience. It's just not very human, but we're forced to pretend like this is doing it for us. You know, we're getting human connection here, but we're not. It's just not scratching that itch for us. And so a lot of people probably thought, oh, I'll just have a video meeting with my friend and I'll feel good afterwards. And then you still felt empty. That's why. This is not exactly what we need to have human connection. So that's a big downside, I see. Another big downside is, as much as we love instant messaging, you have to acknowledge that it's not the same as in-person or phone communication. You cannot type the way that you talk. So in this example, which I love, sure with an exclamation point is sure, but sure with a period is sure, right? And so a lot of people take that as offense. And of course, this is a generational thing too. Everyone brings their own preconceptions to digital communication. I've said things that have been misinterpreted by my coworkers, and I am constantly watching what I type and being very careful about it. So remember, there's a lack of nuance with texting, with chatting, with digital communication. So you have to take the extra effort to be careful with what you're typing and making sure that there's no way it could be interpreted in the wrong way. So with instant messaging, we've noticed at Estipona Group 2 unfortunate side effects, and I have names for both of them. Number one is called the peanut gallery effect. We love our instant messaging, but one day we started to notice that somebody would post something, not a big deal, just a small thing, but because everybody has access to the channel, everyone is able to look at it. And maybe they had time in their day and they threw in their opinion about something. And then someone else saw it and threw in their opinion. And before you knew it, it became this whole big thing when it was really just supposed to be a small little question or a small little thing in the chat. So it ended up being a big time suck, time and energy suck for the whole team, and it wasn't meant to be. So we say internally, beware the peanut gallery effect. We've all talked about it as a team, and since then we have all been much better about it, but it was definitely a real issue that happened that we had to address. The flip side of that is the reaction to the peanut gallery effect, and we call that the silo effect. That's when you're so afraid of the peanut gallery effect that you don't do anything in the public channels at all, and you do it all privately with one person at a time or two people at a time. The problem with that is then you run into people get left out or things get lost. You know, you're not following your normal protocols, your normal channels, and all of a sudden you're doing all of this, you're doing all of your work in these private channels when it should be done in the main channel. So we've had to talk about both the peanut gallery and the silo effect internally, and we're, as a team, just aware of the problem and we work really hard to avoid it. So some downsides of virtual, but not all doom and gloom. You know, as Paige said, there's a lot of upsides, but we do recognize that there are some issues with it. So the point of this talk and what Paige is going to talk about next is some ways that you can help make this not suck so much. And also inject some humanity back into your communication.
So yeah, there's shortcomings, and And there are things we tried that as a company we recognized maybe weren't ideal. It's very company and organization specific. For instance, before the pandemic, we were meeting as a group monthly for a happy hour. You know, we were a virtual company. It was a time and a place to make sure that we got all to see each other's faces and catch up and unwind together. And we certainly heard about people doing virtual happy hours. And it seemed like, well, that's a logical transition. We'll just move these monthly happy hours to the virtual video call setting and it'll be great. The issue is, unlike an actual happy hour where you leave work, you step away from the computer and you go unwind with some friends over a drink, the video cocktail party began to feel like work.
Yeah, I don't want to be on another video call. Like my work is video calls, my fun is video calls. I sleep and I dream of video calls like this cartoon. I don't want to do it.
So, I mean, I think we were all open to it. And so we did that first one. And then the second one, you know, a couple people didn't show and a couple people tapped out early. And the third one, we just canceled. I mean, we acknowledged, as much as we want this to be a socializing tool for us, it's not working. Another thing we tried to kind of institute as a process was having assigned agenda time for chit chat before our meetings. You know, some were calling it forced socialization.
Some.
And I mean, as a company, you know, we're a small company. We know each other pretty well. It felt awkward for us and it felt unnatural. But, you know, we also can acknowledge that for some companies, having that agenda item for chit chat or having a designated virtual happy hour, it does work well. What's important is you have to look at your organization and you have to look at your team and decide if something is working for you. It's just not across the board going to be something that works for everyone, works for you as well. So based on that, there were some things we've learned, you know, based on both 11 years of virtual and then these 8 months of hyper virtual. There are things we've learned about communicating virtually. And the first tip, and in some ways, I think the most important thing, is about learning communication preferences. You know, some folks like the pre-meeting chit chat and some people don't. Some like to get an instant message when they have a work question, you know, they like to send it a quick message. Some people really prefer a phone call to discuss work-related things, or an email where they can kind of stare at it and think about it for a while. You know, when I get assigned a new job, even though our AEs are really good about getting all the details down and you know, making it really clear what the expectation is and what I'm to provide, I like to have a phone call anyways. I like to make sure I'm on the same page with my team and I'm reading everything correctly.
It's easy to misinterpret.
Exactly. But it's very individual. You know, I know beyond workplace, when I need to talk to a client, I have certain clients that I know, because her inbox is jam-packed and she's typically a day or two behind, if I want to get a hold of her, I'm sending a text. You know, if I want to get a messaging, you know, and make sure she sees it right away.
She's probably in meetings and can't answer a phone call.
And we also know, you know, that some coworkers, particularly if they're younger, you know, they've grown up texting, they've had texting in their lives and in their work lives, their entire work careers. And they might feel like a phone call is like really invasive, where some of us, you know, we're very comfortable making phone calls, and that's been a typical part of our work environment. So it's really about learning how the people you work with and how your clients want to be communicated with and what works best for them. Tip number 2, and I actually think this came up in the pre-presentation chatter, is sometimes you just really should pick up the phone. You know, as Nicole pointed out, we lose a lot in instant messaging and emails because we can't see body language. We can't hear nuance. We can't hear tone. You can't hear that pause before the answer, which might indicate I'm not sure, even though I'm saying, yeah. And so we can't be in front of someone On the phone, we can get a lot of that nuance. We can hear a lot of that tone, and it can be a really good alternative to.
You can hear in someone's voice how their day is going. They don't even have to say anything about it. I can tell when I talk to Paige if she's in a good mood or not. She doesn't have to say anything about it.
Exactly. So the phone can be a great way to communicate when, you really need to hear and feel and see. You can't see with your mind's eye, some of that nuance. And, especially we've had this conversation with some of our younger teammates. Don't be intimidated by making a phone call. If people can't answer the phone, if they are in the middle of something, they're not going to answer the phone. But I also would say if you call and you get the voicemail, do not assume people will listen to their voicemail. In my experience,
just don't do it.
Both work and personal, many people do not listen to voicemails. Again, don't leave super important information on a voicemail and assume the recipient is going to hear that.
No, don't leave 3-minute long rambling voicemails. Please don't do it.
And a good tip, if there's something you want to discuss with someone, when you make the call, just give them a heads up that, what you want to talk about, and give them the opportunity to say, oh, I've got time to answer that question. Or, you know what, it's not a great time for me to discuss this complicated thing with you. Let me call you back.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just a good practice when you make a phone call, unless you have just a super quick question, just to give the person a heads up on what the nature of your call is, to kind of make sure they're in the right space to engage with you.
Yeah, because they might feel pressured to answer, especially if it's a boss, or a coworker, and they're like, oh, I always have to answer when these people call. So give them a chance to say, I don't actually have time for that right now.
So third tip for really optimizing your virtual communication is laying the foundation. As we mentioned earlier, collaborating virtually can be really challenging because it requires planning to do it well. Some people can think really well on their feet, and other people, they like to kind of be presented with a topic and be able to think about it and marinate it on a while before kind of being in a public forum where they're expected to talk about it. And this is really another example of those individual preferences. It's not necessarily a good or effective strategy to just spring something on people in a group meeting and expect ideas or expect answers right away. So you can kind of make way for better collaboration by preparing people with the tools they need to succeed in that meeting ahead of time. So this could be, in our industry, it could be a creative brief. It could be reference links if you want people to check out other work. It could be, an agenda that's, detailed enough that people understand how the meeting's going to go and what's expected of them. And so sharing these tools with your team ahead of time just allows for a better collaborative experience.
Yeah, and this is not new, Paige. You've been doing this all of your career. The difference is with virtual, you have to work a lot harder to prepare people, and you have to work a lot harder to keep them engaged and collaborating on the call. So you just have to put in a lot more effort.
Absolutely. And engagement is key. And that's why, as your team or your company is figuring out how you're going to be collaborating, make sure you leave the door open for discussion about the process, especially with younger or more junior members of your team. Make sure they feel that they can voice their opinion about what is working for them and what is not working. Because if you don't do that, if you don't kind of create that environment where you can kind of be honest about the experience, you're going to frustrate teammates, and worse yet, they might just tune out. They just might disengage, and that's a loss for the company and a loss for them. So again, as you're figuring out these processes, because we all are, even 11 years in, still figuring it out, just be open to change and be open to communicating with your team about evaluating how what you're doing is working.
Tip number 4, sharing is caring. We all learned this in kindergarten, right? Except in this situation, we are not sharing our sandwiches with each other. Hashtag COVID. No, I'm talking about sharing information. So for us, with our instant messaging platform, I myself take extra time to share publicly in the channels what's going on both in my work life and my personal life, because my team doesn't see me anymore in real life. They don't know all these little things about me. So I'll say something like, oh, just had a great meeting with X client. Paige has no idea I just met with that client, and then it helps her feel connected to me. I might also say something like, I share a picture, I just got this great thing in the mail, check it out, or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But I just make a lot more effort to share little bits about my life in the public channel. And when my team does it, I engage with it. And I would encourage you guys to do the same. If you're a leader at your company, lead by example and do it yourself. And then when you see your team members doing it, encourage them by engaging with it. If you see, even if you're having a very busy day, if you see someone post something about their personal lives, don't just look at it and say, neat, and move on. Really take the time to say, oh my gosh, that's so cool, or that looks really great, or whatever it is, but show them that you appreciate the fact that they're sharing these personal things about their work or their life in general, because it will help you guys stay connected. And a more connected team, a team that cares about each other and knows what's going on in each other's life, is a stronger, more efficient, more creative, more everything team. So it's worth the extra time that it takes.
And I think the sharing extends, Nicole talked about the social, personal life, but even to work things, not everyone knows what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And, for instance, I saw something today about, working with a potential new client, and there's been a lot of kind of angst working with this client. And so I was able to see from a couple of posts that, they're struggling. And so I just wanted to, chime in and say, wow, I feel your pain on this. And that's a bummer that you're having to deal with that. Like I see you and I hear you, even though we're not sitting in the same room together, experiencing it together.
And by the way, Paige, thank you. That meant a lot. It's nice to feel like you're not alone,
Sure.
Okay. Tip number 5 is recognizing opportunities and catching them out of the air. And also, of course, creating your own. So what I mean by this is, when someone calls you or you call someone, there's usually like a little bit of preamble before you get down to business, right? So here's a great example. One of my clients called me and she clearly had a work thing she needed to talk about. But when I answered, I say, hey, so-and-so, what's going on? And she at that point had 2 options, right? She could have said not much and then launched straight into her work thing, which would have been fine with me. Or she could say, oh, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing in my life. And she chose to do that, which is an opportunity. And I recognized it. She told me that she was picking up her son from his driver's lesson. So now I have 2 choices. I can either say, neat, so what's going on? tell me why you called. Or I can say, oh, how'd it go? Did he pass? Are you excited? Are you nervous? What's going on? And then she told me about it and we had a chance to connect and learn about what's going on in each other's lives. And so that's an opportunity to connect, and you have to recognize when someone's giving it to you and don't just shy away from it, grab onto it as if it's a ball coming at you from the air. Don't just duck it, grab onto it when someone gives you an opening. The flip side of this is create your own opportunities. So if someone calls you or you're talking to somebody and they ask you what's going on or what's new or what's up, of course you can say, nothing. But you can also just share something, just tell them something. Oh, my cat's on my desk right now and he's currently licking my pens or whatever, give them a chance to connect with you. If they don't take it, that's okay. Don't force it, but at least give people a chance to connect with you, share things, and let them decide whether or not they want to grab onto it.
In that same vein, Nicole just said, they might not grab onto it. They might just want to get right down to business. You need to be, it's really essential that we all be empathetic to the world that everyone is living in right now, because we might be having a great day and things are going smoothly and our internet hasn't been glitchy and we look pretty good on our video call. And the person that we need to communicate with might not be sharing that same experience,
Right.
When Nicole sees the opening and says, how's your day? They might say, it's fine, and you can, and you need to be able to assess by the tone of their voice, do they want me to ask more about that, or do they just want me to move on?
Right, exactly.
Because, more than usual, we're all susceptible to really a changing world, right? Like our worlds are not as predictable, our workspaces and our work environments are not as predictable, and we have to respond to just, awkwardness and strain and different things that we weren't having to deal with maybe in quite such a visceral way before.
Yeah, so the other day, I was on a Zoom call, and all of a sudden I started hearing all this commotion behind me, but ever the professional, I was totally focused on the meeting, just, yeah, sounds good. And you could tell the people were trying, like, should we acknowledge what's going on behind her? Should we not? And so somebody said something, Nicole, they're like, Nicole, what's going on in your house? And I look at I can see in the camera behind me that there are 2 dogs running around my house like crazy. And I only have 1 dog. So I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I'm gonna go deal with that. And I hung up. My neighbor's dog had dug under the fence, came into my house through the dog door, was tracking mud all over my house. They were chasing each other just like crazy. And of course, my cat's freaking out. So it was just this crazy nightmare. And luckily the people on the call were very nice about it. And they all asked me about it afterwards. But it was just bananas. Like, this is just the world we're living in now.
Right. So the key is they were nice about it, right? Because they understood, obviously, this was not something that Nicole could have anticipated or prepared for. But, we've had to deal with, especially if you're a parent of young children, kids trying to do schoolwork remotely. And sometimes they need something, they're trying to do something when you're trying to do something. And you might try to schedule it and, I'll help my kid during this time and then I'll be on my call during this time, but it doesn't always work that seamlessly. And instead of getting frustrated with, this client or this coworker who doesn't seem to be focused on the important thing you're talking about, just understand that people might be having some really challenging, experiences of their own, and to be empathetic.
We're all doing our best.
I ran into a client in person at an event, and she mentioned to me that she saw on our last video call, she saw a laundry basket behind me. I've been in construction mode for a long time at my house. I was working in a temporary workspace. Apparently there was a laundry basket behind me. And I was mortified when I heard this. And it wasn't so much like, oh, she saw a laundry basket in my, video call screen. It was more, that apparently made such an impression on her that weeks later she brought it up. So, let's just have a little empathy for, how we're all showing up at work, and just assume people are doing the best they can do.
Okay, tip number 7. This is part of the Nicole Rose Dion secret sauce. I struggle with relationship building. That's one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm so good at getting work done that I often skip or ignore the personal information that is presented to me for my coworkers, clients, friends, you name it, really. I'm so focused on what I'm doing that I tend to tune out the stuff that I don't deem important to the task I have at hand. I know this about myself. My team knows this about me. It's something I'm working on. I instituted this to help me. When I learn something about a coworker or a client or anyone really, I write it down. I know it sounds weird. It has helped me a lot. We have a CRM that we use at Estipona Group, so I have a list of all my contacts and I can add notes to each of them. So if a client tells me, oh, I really like dark chocolate sea salt caramels or whatever, it's just like a fun random thing, I write that down in their profile. And then if I need to get them a gift one day, or if I'm just talking to them in the future, I can pull up their notes and reference things. There's no way you're going to remember everyone's grandkids' names or where they went to college or where they vacationed last year.
Especially if you have a bad memory.
Exactly. So all of this information you can write down. And if you don't have a CRM, you can use a Google Doc or a Word doc or whatever works for you, a notebook. But it helps me tremendously. And then it also helps me feel engaged and not distracted when someone calls me. So sometimes if I'm talking to somebody and they're just chit-chatting, I'll have a tendency to start working while they're talking to me, which I realize is super rude. I just can't help myself. So what I do is I pull up their notes profile, and that helps me stay engaged to what they're saying. It's like I'm turning it into a task for myself. like that personal connection becomes like a task for myself, and then I'm much more engaged. Small anecdote here. One of my clients used to be a professional mini golfer.
Yep,
Just
that's the thing.
which is apparently a thing, super random, but he told me and we all thought that that was so fun. Loved that tidbit about him. So I wrote it down. This was like 3 years ago. He called me the other day and we were just chit chatting and he said that he's going to San Luis Obispo next week. I said, oh, neat. What are you doing there? And he said, going golfing. I happen to have his notes profile up. So I was like, I had totally forgotten about the mini golf thing. So I just casually was like, hey, so you know how you're like a really good mini golfer? Does that help your actual golf game? Super cool. Like I just had that in my brain. And he said, no, it does not actually. Maybe his short game, maybe a little bit, but not his regular game. So we laughed about that and it was just a nice experience for both of us. So I would encourage you to start doing this if you struggle with this like me. And then again, if you have this repository of information about people, how great is that when it comes time to get them a gift or when it just comes time to talk to them about something? It might also help you not put your foot in your mouth. If you have a note that somebody hates the Raiders, maybe don't ask them like, oh, are you planning to go to any Raiders games this year? You know, that kind of thing. It'll help you just have a better connection with your clients, your coworkers, your everyone.
For sure. All right, tip number 8 for optimizing your virtual communication. Use social media. And no, we don't mean, become an obsessive stalker of someone. But if you have a client or a coworker who is active on social, right? They post, they're a public poster, follow them and engage with their content. This is like a window into their life that they're presenting to you. This is one of those opportunities Nicole mentioned that you get to seize to get to know about people. Certainly we've been known at Estipona Group, when we would have our staff meetings and now virtually, oh, I saw, on Instagram, you posted that awesome food picture from Wild River Grill. How was it? How was their COVID protocol? Did you feel safe? It's a way to acknowledge that you're interested in their life and also to potentially share an experience together.
Yeah, most people aren't going to show up to the staff meeting and be like, hi, everyone, I'm Nicole, and here's what I did this weekend. Like, most people are not going to do that. So take it upon yourself to ask each other about things that they can elaborate on. And the nice thing is I'm not on social media all the time. So if Paige posts something, like say she went on a great bicycle ride this weekend, and let's say Jackie sees it and asks her about it, well, I didn't see it. And so now I get to learn all about this in the staff meeting. So ask each other because they probably won't just offer it up likely.
Yeah, and it's a way with both, your colleagues and your clients to just show that, you care and you want to connect beyond the work, beyond the specific job you're trying to do for them.
Yeah, real quick though, only if like they're cool with it. Like if they have a public social presence or they've been very public about adding each other or adding you or whatever, like they invite the attention. I have known some team members to have very private social channels that they don't want their coworkers involved in. So if that's the case, please respect that.
For sure. All right, so those were 8 tips about virtual communication. And basically to summarize, one size does not fit all. There's not one answer, I think we touched on this in the pre-talk about like, what's the solution for Zoom fatigue? There's not a simple, easy solution, unfortunately. How you communicate should be in line and reflect your company culture. And it should be individualized for the person you're communicating with. It takes work, it's not easy. Sorry if you were hoping for an easy answer. At EG, we're all used to working remotely. We've become accustomed to it. And we're also, very seasoned and responsible team. And we're all accountable for our work. And we've never had to like punch a time clock and like be like, I'm working these hours. But we've also learned that we can't all do our job well unless we know what's going on with each other. So it's, out of a matter of maintaining our process and getting the work done. If I want to take a 2-hour, lunch break because the sun is shining and I want to go work in my garden, I just need to let my coworkers know. And so they can manage their communications with me to address that. And if another coworker, has to help a kid with a classroom Zoom, they just need to let us know, and we're not going to schedule a meeting during that time. It has to be individualized, and it has to work for your team
And your culture.
and conveniently the tech world has caught up, and we have all these great workplace communication tools at our disposal, but really it turns out that most of us really crave human interaction. And even though we can get the job done with these great tools, we all want to feel that we're being heard and that we're being understood. And it's really challenging to do that when we can't do it in person. So, what we hope maybe you've picked up from today is that if you want to have more humanized workplace communication, just kind of work hard at it and go out of your way to make sure that how you're communicating is not so narrow and so focused on the work that you miss the opportunity to connect as people.
That's it. The
So
end.
we would welcome any of your questions or really any kind of stories or anecdotes you have about communication and maybe things that have worked for you guys or things that haven't worked, your experiences.
I don't know how this works.
I don't know yet.
Hey, man, I'll always hop in here. Nicole and Paige, I really appreciated your presentation, and I appreciate being one of your clients, but also one of your strategic partners. I appreciate the being able to see the evolution of not only the work from home and virtual environment, but also what has been happening with COVID and what you've done for many of our clients to help us all move through this situation. Because although you guys are veterans, and I would say I'm like a mini veteran, it's been challenging depending on the industry and depending on the client, right? But what I did want to just engage here with is that being connected is so important. And Nicole, some of the things that you said were so eye-opening to me, because I'm a talker. I like to share stories. I will spend 20 minutes of our meeting just talking about what's going on in our lives, because that's what matters to me. It's like, if I don't know what's going on with you, and you, I don't know why you've brought that demeanor to a meeting. I don't know why things maybe are communicated well or not communicated well. And so humanity I wasn't raised texting. I rejected email as long as I could. In college, I thought, it's not going to be for me. We were still faxing a lot when I first started in the advertising agency business. But I will say that the evolution of Nicole and the Estipona Group team has been super impressive to me, because we all used to be able to get together as client, agency relationship and really work through things. And I would force them on Nicole. I was like, no, I'm the client, and I'm going to talk today for 20 minutes. And I could see that she would work through it, but now it seems really valuable. I can text her and say, hey man, can we get on a phone call? And Nicole knows what that means. That means there might be 13 minutes of me talking about what's going on in our lives, and then we're going to get to business, or not. But we've worked through it together, and it's been a huge benefit, I think, to all of us, because once we get through what we're working through, which will probably be in a year and a half or so, we're all going to be better at communicating and connecting and understanding each other. And so your guys' presentation today was really important and valuable, and I appreciate you guys.
Oh, thanks, Brandy. It's nice to have clients like you who are more than just a client, like you're a friend, you're a partner, you're part of the team, we think. So thank you.
Whether you like it or not,
we like it.
But you make a great point in that, whatever happens in a year and a half, honing in these skills is going to make us better at doing our jobs, whether we get to do them in person again, hopefully, or whether we're forced to do them in part virtually and in person, it'll help us all be better at that.
Mhm.
I mean, Paige, you and I worked together 20 years ago, which sounds super crazy, but we did. Where if you were having a client meeting, you had muffins and coffee and
Yep.
snacks in a conference room, and that was your client meeting. And you
Totally
were the
different.
runner, moving things together, back and forth between you and your client. And now everything is so direct and quick and efficient. So blending, it's almost like COVID and this virtual environment is forcing the Gen Xers and everybody else. Let's just call it everybody else because I don't want to generalize. We're learning how to communicate with each other in the best and most efficient, but also emotionally important way.
Right, exactly.
It's not always comfortable, but it works.
Nope. All right, anybody else? I've got a solid 10 minutes and I'm getting the F off of this video call.
Nicole, did you see that there's a question in the chat?
I did not. What are you doing / what's worked well for keeping up team morale when the business outlook is questionable due to COVID? Great question. Staff struggling with the uncertainties in their personal and private lives. Yeah, we've all been dealing with it differently. I think Edward Estipona has done a good job of checking in with each of us, and we also sometimes check in with each other one-on-one or maybe just a 2-on-1 meeting. How are you doing? Because we only have 7 employees. We're really good about knowing what's going on with each other. When COVID started to really hit, so mid-March, Ed had a call with all of us and kind of talked us through it. He expressed his fears. He expressed kind of what's going on with the company and how we were all going to manage. And we were able to just have an open dialogue. And I think that helped a lot. But I don't have a beautiful, perfect answer because we're still dealing with it every day.
Yeah, and to Nicole's point, we're lucky that we have a boss who's very open and transparent. I have worked with less transparent companies before, and it's much more stressful when you just don't know. So obviously we were all continually faced with this uncertainty, but our boss didn't try to hide things from us. He didn't try to be like, oh no, it's all good, or it's all gloomy. He was just honest with us, and that in itself is reassuring because you understand where where the leadership of the company is coming from. It's hugely reassuring to just know when he knows something, he's going to tell us, and be honest with us. So, if you're a leader, know that. If you're not a leader, I hope you have a good one who can do that for you.
I think that's the challenge because it's even leadership doesn't really know. I think a lot of you are familiar with USAC. We're a study abroad organization. So we're up against country regulations, institutional regulations of universities not allowing students to study abroad. So nobody really knows. It's anybody's guess what the next semester will bring, what summer will bring regarding international travel. And so I think it's that level of uncertainty that, everybody's facing in their personal lives regarding any plans they might be making, but we're also feeling it extremely strongly in our work environment where any projects or initiatives we're working on might be for nothing in the end.
Oh.
And that has become a big challenge. And I have 6 direct reports. Has become a big challenge of keeping people motivated month after month when, we gear up and we go, okay, spring's going to be better. And now one by one, we're canceling spring programs because we just can't run them. And so, and we went through it in the summer, we went through it in the fall. So it's just the whole cycle keeps repeating itself and it feels like we can't get out of it. So, while the rest of the country is looking at a second wave or whatever wave we're technically on, we're going through cycle after cycle of our own, never ending COVID situation. And so I think that's where I've noticed that it's become much more challenging to keep the team motivated to keep going and put their full effort in.
So one thing I thought of while you were talking, Sabrina, is Paige she lives nearby me. So she was on a bike ride the other day and she just swung by my house and kind of just like waved at me. She, said, hey, how's it going? And kind of talked to each other from my front door and just spent a random 5 minutes. She didn't tell me she was going to do that. It kind of just happened. And, it's just like a really nice thing. And now we feel good about, we feel connected. And so, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with the work, but we do know what's going to happen with each other. And that's that we're not going to ever not be in each other's lives. We care a lot about each other. The work is great, but the most important thing to me is my team. So
Yeah.
I think staying connected has helped.
Yeah, added challenge, 5 out of my 6 are out of state. They're scattered regionally across the
You're not
US.
stopping by.
So you need random phone calls. How you doing? Just checking in. What's going on? You're gonna have to work on that. Yeah. Lou, did you have a question?
I just sincerely want to applaud Edward Estipona and the Estipona Group for being such pioneers and visionaries on the virtual setting. And I think in general, we all have to brace ourselves to embrace this visual realm for the future, because no matter what happens, this is going to be here, and it's a great way to communicate. I have found it to be phenomenal, and I have a show that I've been enjoying, and it's so much easier to do the show virtually than to go somewhere and do it, because I have all the props all around me, as you can see. So there's so many advantages, and I actually find that interpersonal communication is stronger because you're more focused on the image on the screen, as opposed to looking around and saying, oh, there's Joe, there's this one, there's Dave, there's this one, there's that one. You're not distracted as much. So instead of worrying about when we're going to go back to normal, embrace this as normal, and let's use it and crush it. That's my impression.
My other piece of input here is, and it's going to be a little bit wacky, but don't be afraid to get weird with people. As long as they know that you care, whatever interpersonal communication you're having with them, as long as they know that you care, don't be afraid. Just get weird. Ask them about their blue wall or their bike behind them. I mean, Nicole, I feel like I need to go run or something because I feel like you're fit because of the bike in the background. But I know that sounds kind of silly, but people need to know that you care about things that are happening with them in their vacuum of a life that is behind a Zoom call. Right. It really, really matters. And I think that there's such a wonderful thing that happens when somebody notices something that is random about you when you're living in these vacuums. And so absolutely. I think there's a huge, my sons always say, when I answer my cell phone, this is Brandy. Mm-hmm. They're like, why would you answer your phone identifying yourself when you don't know who's calling? Well, because that's professional. But between my kids and I, we're in totally different worlds, and we have to stitch that back together by being a little weird.
You know who is the king of learning things about people or asking them questions and getting to know them? Clay Hall. He's on the call. I don't know if you guys know him, but he asked a question in the chat that I'm going to get to next, but he's so good. He remembers things about, I don't think he writes it down like I do. He's just so good at hearing things about you, remembering it, asking you about it later, commenting on it in some way. And he has great relationships as a result of it. So good job.
Again, and I think what you called out about Clay and what Brandy was bringing up is people want to be heard and seen. I mean, it's just it's a natural human reaction is you don't want to, most people don't want to be anonymous and unnoticed. They want their ideas, whether it's work or whether it's personal life, they want to be recognized, seen, and heard. And apparently what Clay does well is he listens and then he remembers and recalls so that when he engages with someone, he can remember things about them.
Yeah, see, I don't listen and Paige doesn't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Great combination.
I joke because one of my best friends who I don't get to spend any time with anymore because she's a caregiver for elderly parents and basically is quarantining herself with them or alone. But I call her my auxiliary memory because she will text me and say, it's your other friend's birthday tomorrow. Did you remember? I mean, so yeah, when you can't remember things well on your own, you either need to take good notes like Nicole does or have a friend who serves as your backup drive.
So Paige, what is the biggest lesson you have learned during COVID? That was Clay's question in the chat.
I mean, I became very quickly, and I feel for Sabrina, but I became very grateful for our situation as a company. We are lucky in so many ways. Not only were we virtually already set up to do our jobs and we didn't, have to reinvent the wheel, but we were really lucky in that we had the right mix of clients to survive a pandemic. We have certainly seen plenty of other agencies that didn't have that luck. I'm going to call it luck. It's not like you build a client base with the anticipation that there's going to be a pandemic and you need to, have pandemic proof clients. So I don't know if that's something I learned, but I learned how I'm incredibly grateful for so many things in my life right now. One of them, this job that has been secure, a boss that I can trust to tell me the truth, hobbies, we mentioned cycling, that I can do alone or in small groups that are kind of pandemic safe. A lot of people's lives, I think about my coworker, Jackie, very social. She was used to being with a lot of people all the time. And pandemic has been incredibly challenging for people like that. I guess I'm kind of grateful that I have a lot of solitary activities that have sustained me and kept me happy and sane. I tell you what almost killed me was the smoke. When we had the fires and we were locked literally in our homes because the air was so bad outside.
Yeah.
I thought that's going to be the end of me if I'm trapped like that.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is don't schedule Zoom meetings back to back. We have the ability, because we're not traveling, to do back-to-back meetings, and that is terrible for so many reasons. One, for fatigue, people get really tired. Two, in regular life, we had transition time, we had travel time between meetings, and it gave us a chance to decompress, and also in our minds just sort of do a little debrief of okay, what happened, what are the action items, okay, I'm getting ready to go to my next meeting, we had time in between meetings, we no longer do. So don't do that to yourself. Give yourself at least, if you can, at least a half an hour in between, and don't expect people to go from an hour long Zoom meeting to another hour and be creative and fresh. They just won't. They're going to be tired and checked out.
Engaged. Yeah, it's just hard to say, as the studies have been released about, it takes 20% more energy just to absorb the information on a video call, just by the nature of it. So you're literally exhausting people. You can't, when you do those back-to-back meetings, there's no way they can bring their best self to that meeting, the second meeting. There's just no way.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. It was so nice to be here.
And again, a big round of applause for the Paige and Nicole. Thank you guys for doing it. Thanks for the entire Estipona Group team. And we'll see you guys soon.